Hello, and welcome back to the My First Marathon podcast. My name's Taylor, and today I talked to a runner who is proof that there is no one way to run a marathon. We got into training for his first marathon, where his longest run was only 8 miles, and how, because he was coming off of playing soccer in college, he was able to run it no problem. He tried that same approach for a second at the Chicago Marathon, and it was a much different experience. And we also get into how running fits into his busy life now, and what goals he has, and what's coming up next. I love this episode. I think you're going to love it too. So without further ado, please welcome Josh. All right, Josh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. How's your weekend going so far?
Going good. It's all rainy over here in Wisconsin, but other than that, pretty good.
Is it typically rainy this time of year, or is that kind of coming out of nowhere?
I don't know. I feel like last year it rained hardly. This year it's been raining a lot. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's typical.
Typical. Okay, cool. Well, hopefully it dries up a little bit for you for this weekend. But again, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to break down your couple of marathons that you've ran here. But before we get there, I'm curious how you kind of got involved with the running world in the first place.
I would say mostly just seeing my parents run. They were both very active, especially when I was back in high school, college. My parents were always signing up for marathons. My dad did a full Ironman once, and watching him do that was pretty interesting. I realized I would never want to do that after seeing what he had to do to to
Sure.
get there. But just seeing him always active kind of made me want to sign up for a few here and there.
Cool. And we were talking before this, but this was pretty early on. So you were in college when you were thinking about this. So was it kind of, I'm going to sign up for a marathon and then I'm just going to figure out how to do it? Or were you involved in running at all before you signed up?
No, not at all. No, I was very active in sports. Soccer was my sport in college, so I would say I ran a lot, but I was never like in the marathon or running world until my parents signed me up for one, or they had a friend that they were going to run with, and then he had to back out for some reason. And they're like, "Hey, Josh, come do this in his spot." I was like, "Okay, well, this sounds like fun. Why not?"
Yeah. You were the backup, second string, ready to go in. Cool. So soccer is where it kind of started for you, I guess.
Yeah.
What was the running side of soccer even interesting to you, or were you just playing because you like to play? I feel like sometimes with team sports, it's like you either like the running side or you like the sports side, but it's usually not both.
No, I like to play. I just like the sports aspect, and soccer. I don't know. I grew up playing soccer, so it was always part of my life. And as you know, there's a lot of running within soccer, so I didn't have to like train outside of soccer. I just went and played every day, and I was in pretty good shape.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this, but like when for a week in soccer, like how many miles are you putting on your body just training for like a soccer game?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I didn't
Yeah.
really track any of this back then. I was just typical college kid, just kind of winging life, just doing
Just
doing
going for
whatever I
it.
felt like. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. That's no problem. I was just curious, like how much of a base that you even had going into this thing, because going into a marathon without a lot of training, even when you're in college, it's like it's a hard feat on your body no matter what. So, how did you kind of transition from just running for soccer to kind of putting some miles on yourself for the marathon?
Yeah, so it was during the summer one time. So I used to work at summer camp, so I would be home for a couple of weeks before and a couple of weeks after. So this one, I believe it was before I went to work, and I think I had 2 weeks at home before I ran in between college and the actual marathon. I don't know the exact timeline, but it wasn't that long that I was home, and I just went on every run that my parents went on, and it was easy, I guess. The most I
Yeah.
ran for the first marathon, the most that I ran was 8 miles with my parents a couple weeks
Wow.
before the actual marathon. And then I go out there and this marathon was in Green Bay, I think in 2011, I want to say. And I crushed it. Like I stayed back with my dad for 20 miles and I was feeling great. And I could see at like mile 20, he was starting to like fade quite a bit. And he was like, just go ahead. I'm holding you back. Take off, do what you got to do. And so I started running. I felt great the whole time. And I don't remember my time on that, but it was so much faster than I expected. It was like a little more than 3.5 hours, I believe, for that one.
Wow. That's crazy, running 8 miles as your longest run before a marathon. I don't think I've heard that very often. And I know you were in college, so it's a little bit different, like
Yeah.
physicality wise, but What do you remember from like the actual marathon? You said it was pretty, I mean, pretty straightforward, but were there any miles where you were thinking, God, this is taking forever, or I don't know what I'm doing here, or like what was going through your head the whole
Oh,
time?
every mile did feel like that. I mean, I was
Sure.
feeling good. I was just running, but yeah, I had those thoughts going through my head. This is taking forever. But it was. I do remember. So this was how long ago? Over 10 years ago. But I do remember that was like one of the windiest days. Here. I mean, it's windy here in Green Bay often, because this is where I live. So it's windy here often. But actually running outside with the wind like heavy into your face. And granted, we had some times when it was behind us, and that was great. But those times when it was like heavy into your face, it made it terrible. Just
10
like one
times
of those
harder.
feelings
Yeah.
again.
Do you remember what the route was like? Was it like an out and back or a loop, or what was the route like?
um, I don't remember. It was. Yeah, I couldn't tell you because I
That's
did just
okay. Long time
I,
ago.
that half marathon I just did now. It was a loop, and it was the same first loop before, and then I ended at the half, and then the second loop went to the other side of the river. So there's a river that runs right through the middle of Green Bay. So the half was on the west side of the river, and then the full marathon goes to the other side.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, cool. And then yeah, for the first marathon, do you remember if you did anything in terms of like fuel or anything like that, or take water with you, or did you just mainly rely on the aid stations and just went for it?
Aid stations. I just, I was winging everything pretty much,
Yeah.
and they had some of those like gel pack fuels, several of the aid stations. So I would obviously take a couple of those and bank them in my pocket as I was running. But yeah, I would
Yeah.
walk and that's kind of what I did every single time, and it was just basically what my parents were doing. Just walk every water station. Don't feel like you need to run through them or anything. So walked through them,
Yeah.
took my time if I needed to, and kept going after that.
Got through it.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, that's probably the quickest marathon recap I've got through for the first one. But I think it just shows that like there's no one way to run a marathon. I know, like we said, you were in college, so that's a little bit different. But just there's no straightforward way to get through this thing. But were you thinking when you crossed the marathon, like the finish line at the marathon, were you thinking I'm going to do this again? I'm going to get into running now, or were you not? Were you not hooked at that point?
I mean, it was a great feeling, and here at this Green Bay one, um during the last mile, you run the loop in Lambeau, and that I'm a huge Packer fan, so that was like extremely surreal to me. It was great. Um, so at that point, I was on a huge high. I was like, yeah, I did want to do it again, and I did my second one within a couple years after that. Um, but yeah, it was amazing, and then thousands of people there at the close to the finish line. Most of them runners, but some spectators. I don't. Yeah, it's great. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, the finish line feeling's unreal, especially for a marathon, and especially for a bigger marathon. It sounds like that one had quite a few people, and yeah, just the energy at the end is insane. So from there, were you thinking, okay, I'm gonna sign up for another one and start like actually training for it, or doing a little bit more, or what kind of came after that first marathon?
No, after that first one, I didn't really think of it for a while, and then kind of a similar situation happened. My parents were running the Chicago Marathon, and I don't, I don't know if they like originally started like, "Hey, you want to run this with us?" or if it was kind of a similar situation because this was also about 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Um, and I ended up signing up kind of last minute for this one again, so it must have been a similar situation. But at this point, I was married and I had a kid, and so I had put on a little weight. But at the time, I was thinking to myself, "Oh, I did it no problem last time. I'm just going to do the same thing, wing it." I think I ran 8 or 10 miles for my longest training run for this one,
yeah,
um, and then I definitely paid for it. Like the first marathon, I felt great the whole time. This one, I felt terrible the entire time. Oh man,
yeah,
like my legs were chafing, and then my I was cramping the whole time. And granted, the one in Chicago, it's a lot more concrete jungle or whatever. So the heat was kind of coming off the roads a little bit heavier than
mm,
I remembered, and it was a rough time, that's for sure.
sure, sure. And then what was like the time between the two? How many months between your first marathon and your second marathon, or years?
It was a couple of years. It
Okay.
was like 2 or 3 years.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. And then, so the Chicago Marathon, that's a massive one. That's a world major that you got to run, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
What was it like? Like, were you training with your parents ahead of it, or you were kind of doing your own thing the second time around?
Yeah, so at that point I was married, so I didn't really live at with my parents anymore. So all of
Mhm.
my training was on my own. It was kind of similar to the first one where I didn't really take it seriously. I was thinking I could just wing it again. This is not
Yeah.
the case. I don't know if it's well because like I said, I was married, so I wasn't playing soccer every day, and I wasn't just running. I wasn't as active. But I do remember running like 8 miles once. I think 10 miles once.
Yeah.
It was yeah.
That's just crazy that you
I'll
were able to
recommend.
do that. That you were able to do that, or even just like I don't know, put yourself through it a second time with
Yeah,
I guess since the first experience went so well, maybe you were just a little like naive to the marathon distance
100%.
post soccer life, but
That's exactly what it was.
yeah,
I was still dumb, and I wasn't. Yeah, I hadn't. It went so well the first time. I didn't realize that it was going to be so terrible the second time.
sure. Sure. So yeah, I guess we could break down that race experience a little bit more. Do you remember? I know it was a long time ago, but do you remember like when were the high points of the race? When did you start to feel the cramping and things like that? Just
It
kind of
was
walk through
it
the
was
miles a
super
little
early
bit.
on. Like I started, my legs were like chafing. It was only a couple miles in. I would say maybe 5 miles in is when I started really feeling that. Um, the cramping started happening a few miles after that. It was I don't know, it was a lot hotter on this one, and maybe it was because the first one was so windy. It kind of helped keep me cool. This one it just felt so much hotter, and so I felt like I was cramping faster. It took me longer to get from each water station to the next one. It felt like, and so I was waiting. There's not a great experience on the second one, and maybe that's why it
Yeah.
took me 10 years before I ran another one.
Sure.
um, but that one was tough. It was hot. It was a lot more concrete heat, just kind of reflecting everywhere. And yeah, although I will say the Chicago, it was amazing in the fact that like it seemed like every single turn there was like a band or like some
Mm,
singer or something. Like there was never any dead spots, so that kind of kept me going. Here, the one here in Green Bay, there's a lot of dead spots. And when I'm comparing the two,
yeah. Sure. I mean, Chicago's just unreal, and it's
yeah.
was it hillier, less hillier than the Green Bay one that you ran first?
It was, I would say it was similar. There was
Okay.
definitely some hills, but it wasn't terrible. No, it was a little bit hilly. I don't remember the full thing, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious. I think some people say like running a world major, those tend to be a little bit harder courses and things like that. So, was just curious how that felt. But well, cool. So, what miles did you feel like you were feeling pretty good? Were there any miles like stretches where you were like, okay, this I can finish this thing. I'm gonna work my way through this.
Um, but it wasn't until the end. I don't know. It was a challenge. So like I said, like mile 5 is when it started kind of hurting a lot, and
Yeah.
at that point, I'm so early into it. I just had to mentally grind it out. It was probably the last 5 miles when I started realizing like I'm kind of getting close. And then obviously the last like 2 miles, I actually picked up my pace, and then the final mile, I felt like I was sprinting. Probably wasn't running too fast, but you know how it
Sure.
is. You feel like you're moving a lot faster that final mile.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, in those moments where you're like cramping up or you're feeling like everything's hurting, this isn't going the way that the last one went. Like what are you saying to yourself to push yourself through those moments?
Um, I mean, I feel like I'm mentally strong in that aspect. Like I never once did it cross my mind like I couldn't finish this. I'm more along the lines of it just might take me a little bit longer. So I was never kind of down on myself that much. It was more just get comfortable. It's going to be a long day, basically.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it whether it sucks or not.
100%. Yeah, I was never. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not a quitter. I definitely complete everything, but yeah, like I said, it just took me a lot longer than I originally expected.
yeah, for sure. And did you run this one solo or did you run this one with somebody the second time around?
No, those my parents were both ran the same one again.
Gotcha.
And I think we ran the whole thing together. So they were definitely waiting for me on this one. Like in the Green Bay, both my parents ran that, and I was like far ahead of them. Well, I should say at 20 miles, I took off from my dad. But this one, like we started together, and because of all the issues I was having, they stayed back with me. They could have finished 30 minutes in front of where we did, but they kind of stayed back with me just because I don't know, family event. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to do it together.
Yeah.
And I guess what was it like doing it the whole experience with your parents? It's got to be pretty special to be in like a Chicago race environment and have your parents with you.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I mean, I was only, how old was I? 20, maybe 21 at the time. So I don't think I really understood kind of how cool it was to be running in the Chicago Marathon.
Sure.
Um, but I mean, it was a really cool experience. Like we had a great time. 5 hours of running together with your parents. Yeah, it was pretty cool, especially
Yeah.
through all through all the Chicago streets. Yeah, it was super cool.
Yeah, yeah, just kind of keeping each other engaged. It'd be nice to have somebody to talk to through that whole time, or just support you through that whole thing. So,
Yeah, especially
no,
with
I think
the
that's
with the
great.
challenges that I was experiencing because they were right there, like encouraging me the whole time too. Like if I
Sure,
was by myself, I would have taken even longer.
sure. How long have they been running for?
Oh, they've been running forever. As long as I can remember, I remember they did like a marathon relay back when I was really little. That's the earliest memory I have of them running. Um, but that they sign up for marathons every once in a while, and they actually ran for their 25th anniversary. They ran the Miami Marathon,
Oh,
and
wow.
they ran in a wedding dress and a tuxedo.
Wow, that's
And they
cool.
were yeah, that sounds kind of dumb, but they did it. It was like their special thing, and they were featured on like one of the newspapers there in Miami because of it. So yeah, they've been running as long as I can remember marathons all the time. I know my dad's joints are kind of fading a little bit, so he's not running as much now, but they've been running as long as I can remember.
You've been around it for basically your whole life, which is pretty cool. So,
Pretty
was there ever any like spectator experiences you had as a kid where you got to watch them race, and maybe you were thinking like, I don't know if you were inspired to go out and do it yourself, but you were thinking, okay, this world is kind of cool.
Yeah. So I know I'm trying to remember which race it was, but my dad, he's always like trying to map out like what's the best places to go during the race. Like I feel like we can go see mom run over here and then we can like run over to this spot. And so he was always mapping that out. Those were always really fun. Um, Sometimes I'm like, yeah, just chill. I want to want to relax for a little bit, but he was always trying to see her at every point and like encourage her and I don't know, give her some water or whatever it is. So those are really cool because I mean you see the person's face and they kind of light up every time they see you. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. The spectators are huge, like on both sides, having them in the race with you so they can kind of push you through, or having them
Yeah,
on the sidelines. It gives you like a little extra boost when you see your crowd out there cheering for you for sure.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but I'm curious because that's pretty unique to have parents that like grew up in this world, and that you were around it so much as a kid. So even outside of running and inspiring you to go out and run, like what did them doing all of that like teach you, or did that impact you anyway in your life?
I think just as much effort as they put into just staying healthy and the exercise. Granted, I never loved running. Like I said, I was just in soccer, so that's kind of part of it. I didn't start like enjoying to run until I was probably the last couple years. Because now like as I'm working in business and stuff like that, I can kind of think and it's kind of quiet. So I do enjoy running now, but seeing them put as much effort into their fitness and to their health as I saw growing up, that was always very impactful. Just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, just sets a good example for you. Sets those
Mhm.
maybe habits early on, which is huge. It's hard to change a habit later in life, so maybe being
Yeah,
around it growing up was big for that.
yeah,
Um, but cool. So you said that your relationships kind of changed with running in the last couple of years. How has it
yeah.
changed?
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't been playing sports or competitive sports in a long time. So just kind of getting back into the routine of exercising. And granted, I play other sports like golf, pickleball, some other things that are not associated with like huge cardio or whatever.
Yeah,
So I did start trying to run a little bit. It was my goal for this year to run in a marathon again, and so I figured I should actually train this time because I'm definitely older. I'm heavier, and I felt like I didn't want the same experience as when I had in Chicago. So I actually started training, and it was kind of just a goal for this year. But then after I started kind of training, I realized like it's actually enjoyable. Especially here in the winters of Wisconsin, they're pretty brutal. So we have our Peloton down here, and I was just running, and I don't know,
nice.
quiet, and I can focus and think about things that I need to think about. It's peaceful. I have 4 kids too, so there's not a lot of peace in this house. So
Sure.
it's peaceful down here every once in a while when I get up in the mornings and run.
Yeah, just some time to yourself. That's I'm sure super important having 4 kids in the house all the time. How old are your kids?
So our oldest is 11. So we have three. We had 3 girls. Our son is 2.5 weeks old right now. But we have an 11-year-old, 7-year-old, 4-year-old, and now this little guy, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, you got your hands full, and congratulations on your son. That's great. So when did you decide that you were going to start training for the marathon? How many months ago was that?
Um, In the middle of the winter sometime. I don't remember. I just knew that I wanted to force myself. I kind of forced myself into like training pretty much. It's like if I just
Yeah.
sign up, then I'll do it. I want to say it was so I just ran it in end of May, probably February. Probably February. I made the decision to actually sign up for something, and it was kind of I don't want to say peer pressure, but I heard that my sister and my mom were running it, and I was like, oh, I can do that. So
Yeah, that
I'll
you can't
sign
do
up
it without
again.
me.
Yeah, exactly. And I heard they were running the half marathon. I was like, Psh, I'm gonna do the full marathon. And then
Sure.
I changed my mind. So but I did the half.
Cool. So were you following any sort of training plan this time around? Did you go seek out anything online or anything like that, or just kind of did your own thing?
Yeah, I googled like a couple different training programs, and then after I was unable to follow them very strictly, then I was just like, well, if I run 3 miles every day and then have like 2 long runs a week, then I should be fine. So I did actually run 10 miles twice before this half marathon. I felt much more prepared than the last one,
Sure.
so it was definitely worth it. And yeah, like playing golf doesn't really prepare you for a marathon, so I knew I had to do something more than I used to, especially being
Sure.
older and stuff.
Yeah, so you were basically like a couple short runs a week, and then you were doing your long runs on the weekend, and just kind of like increasing the distance on the weekends.
Yep. Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, and I knew
Um,
that I had to, or not I knew, but I ran 3 miles minimum every day, and so I kind of helped me stay ready. And then I knew a couple long runs per week would be nice. I think I did that 3 or 4 times a couple of weeks beforehand.
cool. Yeah, that's great. I think just especially building your base up from like taking some time off and then coming back to it, just having a consistent kind of schedule that you can stick to like that was probably helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm sorry, you said that it was a couple months of training, February to May, you said?
Yeah, it was I would say it was definitely inconsistent training,
Hmm.
but from the time that I decided to actually do it was probably a few months.
Hmm. Okay, cool. And when did you decide to switch from the full to the half?
When I was not preparing like I knew I should to do a full
Gotcha.
marathon. Yeah,
Sure.
it was. I made the decision probably only a few weeks before the actual event to cut it back. Um,
Yeah. Do you think that now that you've got a little bit of a base, that you just ran this race, that you'll continue to build up from here and sign up for a marathon later in the year, or where are you thinking you're gonna go from here?
I don't know. I definitely don't plan for these things. I just hear somebody else saying that they're going to, and then I'm like, oh, I can do that.
Sure.
It's not that
Yeah.
hard. And then I realize it's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But I mean,
definitely. Sorry. Go ahead.
I would be open to it. I think I would do another one this year. That's
Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, like you said, like getting something on the calendar, I think is huge. I know for me, like even though I've my marathons in November, signed up months from now, like I had to have it on the calendar in January, or I would not have been training from January to
Yeah,
to now. So yeah, I think getting something on the calendar is really important. It sounds like that's what you
yeah,
did, and what do they call it? Like ABC goals. Your A goal is always to complete the marathon, and then you've got your B goal that's like, oh, maybe I'll do it a little slower, and your C goal is like, maybe I'll change the distance. So I think it's
yeah,
okay to to have a couple of different goal options when you're going into these things, especially if you're feeling underprepared because you don't want to hurt yourself or anything like that.
yeah, yeah. And I do see what the health of my dad, and I feel like I got to be careful with some of my joints because I feel like it's going to be my genetics not to have great joints in the future. So I'm yeah not trying to kill myself on distances. Just
Yeah,
trying to stay consistent. And ever since the half marathon here in Green Bay this year, I haven't done a whole lot of running. I definitely want to. I took like a lull, but I definitely want to get back into it.
yeah. What were the 10-mile runs like? Because that was the first time in training that you had really ran like that distance. So what did those runs feel like for you?
They actually felt pretty challenging. They were all downstairs here, so I think it might have been a little better if I was able to do them outside. But because it was still pretty cold and winter here in Wisconsin, I don't want to run outside. I know people that do it, but I'm not that person. So I was down here on the treadmill, and now that they have like little shows, I just watch shows the whole time. Um, it was fine. I do remember though. So I didn't upgrade my shoes, and I didn't
Mm,
realize that I didn't realize how important that was when I was training, because while I was doing the first couple long runs, I'm not sure which muscle it was, but in my lower leg, my left lower leg, my um, muscle was cramping like for 3 miles before it like finally kind of released.
Mm,
And then I got new shoes and I didn't feel that at all the whole time. So
yeah.
I recommend definitely upgrading shoes. I'd had these shoes for like years, and granted, I don't run like a ton, but I probably put like 1,000 miles on them over the last few years.
Yeah. Yeah, shoes are
Um,
huge for sure. I actually,
yeah,
it's funny. My mom just kind of went through something similar to that. She's starting to get back into running again, and she was running on these shoes she had from like I don't know 5 years ago, 6 years ago, or something like
yeah,
that. And she's complaining, my hips are hurting, my back's hurting. I'm like, Mom, when's the last time you went shoe shopping? Like, it
yeah.
makes a huge difference.
Oh, huge difference. Yeah, it's kind of seems kind of dumb, but yeah, man, huge difference.
Yeah.
So then after that, I ran 10 miles without cramping up, and I was kind of taking them slow. I didn't really train. Really, I wasn't going for speed. I was just going just to complete this one. So I ran. I don't remember 10. I don't remember, but yeah, I was training slow. What felt kind of slow, but I was able to finish without stopping.
Yeah, they say keep the easy runs slow, especially when you're building a base back up. I think if you go too fast, you risk like injury, you risk like exhaustion, you risk hating running. I hear that a lot from people who go back
Yeah.
and pick it back up, or they're newer runners. Like if you come out too fast and kill yourself, it's not fun. So I think it's
Yeah.
good to start slow for sure.
And I think that's part of the reason I actually started enjoying running a little bit more, because I used to always just push myself, like I'm just going to go as fast as I can because I know I'm running, like just for example, I'm running 3 miles. I don't love it, so I'm just going to try to finish it as fast as I can.
Sure.
But now when I run, I definitely like pace myself. I go a lot slower, and it actually is pretty enjoyable these days.
Yeah. And you said it's kind of like it allows you to slow down and really think. Like, what do you typically think about on runs? Are you thinking about work? Are you thinking about your home life? Are you just zoning out? Like, what does that look like?
There's definitely some zoning out. There's several miles where there's like zero thoughts.
Yeah,
But I do think about like business type stuff. I have a business with my brother-in-law and my sister, so there's a lot of that stuff kind of going through my head, how we can make things better and make more money.
yeah, that's always the goal.
Who doesn't think of that?
For sure. It does it feel like I know for me personally, like when I'm thinking about work or I'm thinking about I don't know ideas that I have or whatever when I'm on a run, it feels like I can like the thoughts are slower. I can actually really process everything and really think about what I want to do. Do you feel like that's the case for you too?
I do, yeah, and it's kind of similar to the like when I drive to work, I don't listen to music anymore. I haven't done that for years. Now it's all like podcasts, like either motivational or business or um, kind of those are my two biggest categories. So it's kind of similar to when I'm listening to podcasts. Like I'm listening to them, but then at the same time, like I'm thinking and like kind of processing what I'm listening to and how can I apply it like in whatever aspect of life that I'm trying to improve on. And it's kind of similar like with running because there's no like I said, there's some miles where there's zero thoughts, but then the other miles it's definitely thinking a little bit slower because I know I have an hour of running so I don't feel like I have to be so fast paced with my thoughts either.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. It's a great processing tool for sure. And it's something that you like you were saying with having all your kids, it's a time that you can just spend with you and like
Mhm.
internally just be with you, which I think is helpful in a lot of ways. But,
Yeah.
well, cool. So I want to hear about the half marathon day as well. So how did the half marathon go for you?
Okay. So it was good. I was planning. I was trying to. So there was like three different goals, kind of ABC goals, like you said
Yeah.
earlier. So I obviously wanted to finish. I wasn't sure, so I recently started being a little bit more active on social media, and I was trying to decide, I was like, do I want to like be fun and dumb on social media during this race, or do I want to try to post a pretty decent time? Um, so I had my phone with me and I made a couple of posts early on and I was like, yeah, this is kind of lame. I'm just gonna try to post a time now. So I started a couple miles in and I ended up putting a few posts up during the race, which was kind of fun. But my goal was under 2 hours and I made it in an hour and 53, I think, which was way better than I could have imagined. So, like I was not expecting that, and I felt great the whole time. Um, I will say the half marathon was much mentally it was not as tough because I knew it was 13 miles and I had already done 10 miles a few times before, whereas with the full ones like going from 8 miles to 26, like that was kind of a mental hurdle that I had to get over.
Sure.
But this one was good. There was only a few spots. There's a lot of trees on this one, so it was kind of shaded. It was a hot day. but there's a lot of trees, so I was able to run in the shade a decent amount. They had a couple times where they would like spray you with the water. Those were great. Oh man, those were so nice.
Yeah, I agree.
um, there was, I would say the most challenging part of it. This one was mile 10 to 11 for me. I don't know why, but it was my slowest mile for sure, and I felt like that was definitely the most difficult one. Um, and then in the 12th mile, no, the 11th mile, 11 to 12, I feel like the road we were running on was lower on the left side, and at that
Oh,
point,
that's the
like,
worst.
oh, it was so bad
Y-
because I was already like exhausted, and then I'm like trying to pick up my time for the last 2 miles, and then like we're on this slanted road, and like my left hip, I was like, man, like I'm so old, I can't even run anymore. But then yeah, after a little bit, I realized it was actually the road that was just a little slanted, and man, that was a struggle. I don't know what I would do differently though. Like maybe run in the grass for a little bit, and I don't know.
Yeah, some of that stuff you just can't do anything about. I would much rather. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like when you feel like your left hip is putting in more effort than your right hip, and it's like
Yeah,
it's the worst. I would almost rather run up a hill than than do
yeah.
that
Just
sometimes.
keep it flat. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what was the finish line feeling like? Like was it a pretty big crowd there that for this time around for the half
It
marathon, or
wasn't.
what was it like?
It felt like it was a little small. I mean, it was a decent amount, but it felt like it was smaller, and it's the same finish line for the half and for the full. So I did the same loop in Lambeau Field. That was really fun. I did a Lambeau leap. I don't know if I was supposed to or not, but I did it, and it was really cool. Um, but it felt like there was a smaller crowd than last time I ran it 10 years ago or 12 years ago, however long that was. Um, but I mean, it was same. Like it was great. It was worth it. It was huge runner's high or whatever. The
Yeah.
last probably full mile actually, because that was included in the Lambo, and then the finish line right outside the stadium. That was great.
Cool.
I would do that
It
again.
yeah, it sounds like a really cool experience.
Yeah.
And does the half and the full finish at the same time, or did the full start before you and finish
Yeah, the
after
full
you?
started at what time was it? It started an hour before we did. I think they started at
Okay,
7. We started at 8.
gotcha,
I believe so. Yeah, but they started a full hour before us.
gotcha. I think that's better because then there's more runners out on the course. I've always kind of the races or the marathons where at the half marathon point they just finish and then you have to finish the other half of the marathon is like kind of disheartening for for the
Yeah.
marathon people. So I like when they start the or they do kind of a staggered start and everybody gets to finish around the same time.
Yeah, yeah, on the same finish. Yeah, it was great
Yeah.
seeing, and because then after I finished, I'm watching all these like full marathoners come in, and I'm yeah impressed and like congratulating them and all that stuff. So I definitely liked that because yeah, that was fun to see.
Yeah. And was your family there? Was your wife and kids? Did they get to go?
They were, yeah. So they showed up for the finish line. I didn't see them; they were kind of lost in the crowd. So I saw them afterwards, obviously. But yeah, they were watching me at the finish line, a couple hundred yards up from the actual finish line.
Yeah. What a cool example you're setting for your kids and that they get to
Yeah.
watch you do this kind of thing. Do you
Oh, I
think
hope
that
so.
like your daughters or anything will ever get into it? I know that they're like kind of at that age where they might be influenced
Maybe.
by something like that.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I've mentioned golf a few times. They're always wanting to go golf with me. Do they actually like golf? I have no idea, but they want to do what I'm doing. So who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe they'll want to race every once in a while when they get
That
older.
would be really cool. They always have like the little fun runs at the local races. Maybe you could take them out there. They could do like a little
Yeah,
mile race or something like that. Would be
yeah.
pretty
Well, I
cool.
did do a 5K last summer, and my oldest went and did that with me.
Oh, cool,
So she's
cool.
already, now that you mention it, yeah, she's already kind of got the bug to just do what I'm doing, and I don't know, she liked the race vibe. Although she
Yeah.
was she was saying the whole time, she's like, "Man, 3 miles is so much further than I thought it was gonna be."
It is, yeah. The first
Yeah.
time, especially the first
Oh
time you
man.
run it, you're like, okay, this is never gonna end. But did she
Yeah.
like the medal and the bib and all that? Was that just super
Yeah.
cool for
Oh,
her?
she had a blast. It was so fun. Got a bunch of
Yeah,
pictures, and yeah. I don't know if
that's awesome.
we didn't get medals, but yeah, the bib and stuff was great.
Oh, that's the worst. They got to give you a medal. What's a race without a medal, right?
And they
That's why
gave
we
me
do
an
it.
excuse to run slower also, so it was perfect.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. Well, cool. So what's kind of coming up for you from here? So I know you don't have any races on the calendar, but are you planning on just maintaining a base and seeing what comes up from here?
I think so. I haven't run a whole lot since this half marathon, but I definitely want to get back into it. So I'll probably honestly sign up for something else just to give me that motivation. Like I better stay good, and probably push it back towards the end of the year. I'll look at what options there are. But I'm also realizing like how many more like smaller runs are available. So I might sign up for
Hmm.
something like a 5 or 10K just somewhere else local here in closer to Green Bay. I
Yeah.
know they have one in Appleton, which is only about 30 minutes away. So maybe I'll sign up for that just to keep myself motivated.
Yeah, just sprinkle them. I think that's the way to go. That's what I did for my first marathon. Is I signed up for the marathon, but then I found a bunch of races along the way because the marathon was way far out for me to stay. I mean, I'll stay motivated, but like the
Right.
races in between will help you stay even more motivated, I think.
Yeah, like 5 and 10Ks or like half
Yeah,
marathon.
I would just kind of look at my plan, honestly, and if I had a 6 mile run on a weekend or something like that, I would just look and see if there's any races that line up, a 10K that'll line up with that race or with that mileage. If I have like a 13 mile run on the calendar, I'll see if there's any half marathons around I can run. Because that's a
Oh,
lot more
great.
fun than going out and running on a
Yeah.
trail
Oh
by
man.
myself,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
Well, cool. Well, I'm excited to kind of see what's coming up next for you. One question I did have is I know that you've got a lot going on in your professional world too. You're remind me your actual job title for your
Yeah.
nursing stuff.
Well, so yeah, so I do. So I'm a nurse anesthetist. So I do a couple of things. I know I mentioned the business I have with my brother-in-law and sister.
Yeah,
So we are real estate investors. We have our own podcast for nurses. But then in the hospital, I do anesthesia. So I'm CRNA, certified registered nurse anesthetist or
cool.
nurse anesthesiologist. So I do that. I do that about half the year. I have 26 weeks that I contract with a hospital, and I do that. And then in the other weeks, I'm busy with our real estate and our podcast and everything that we do with that.
Yeah. So you've got a lot going on. And a lot of people that I talk to are, working professionals that do running or marathon running as well. So I'm just kind of curious, like, as you're thinking about this next marathon, how do you think that's going to fit into your life, or how are you going to make time with all of this other stuff that you have going on?
Um, it's going to be challenging. Yeah, doing hospital work, our business, having a family life at home. It's definitely a challenge. But I don't know. That's a really good question.
You're like, I got to figure that
Somehow
out.
I find time to do it all. I don't know how, but somehow I do. I just
Yeah.
getting up a little bit earlier and running a few miles. It's not that hard to do. Just get up like 45 minutes early, and I can fit in 3 miles every morning. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's I don't know
Are
how I
you a
do it, to
morning
be honest.
runner? Or do you like running in the morning or do you like running in the afternoon more?
Um, I don't. I like getting up. I don't like getting up like super early in the mornings. But I do like running in the mornings. So if I have an open morning, I'll definitely do it in the morning as opposed to in the afternoon. Because usually I feel like it takes me a long time to wind down after a run. So if I did
Hmm.
it in the evenings, I wouldn't be able to get to sleep at I don't want to say on time, but like at a decent hour. It would kind of affect my sleep, and I don't like to do that. I love my sleep.
Sure. Sure. No, I get that. Yeah, it's always I'm the same way with an afternoon run. It's like it gets you a little bit, I don't know, wired, I guess. You'll crash if you run long enough, but it gets you a little wired. So I'm definitely a morning runner as well. Do you like to listen? I know you said podcasts and things like that. Are you a headphone in listener when you're outside? Do you listen to
Yeah.
music podcasts? What do you like to do when you run outside?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'll kind of mix it up. I'll put a little music on to start, and then once I'm kind of in the middle of it, I'll throw on a podcast. Um, I do like podcasts because it kind of helps me to run a little bit slower, as
Mm,
opposed to like some of the music that kind of gets me running faster than I'm trying to train for. So the podcast will get me kind of running slower, and they're lengthier, so it's kind of all one thought. And um, I don't know. Like I said, I kind of daydream a lot and like think about like either business or like other things while I'm doing it, and it's a little easier to do while it's podcast and just people talking.
for sure. Yeah, helps you just zone in a little bit.
Yeah,
Hopefully makes it pass a little bit quicker too,
yeah,
which is always good.
yeah.
But cool. Okay, cool. So for I guess my last couple of questions for you, I asked a couple of these questions at the end for everybody. But I'm
Mhm.
curious, like, what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe thinking about signing up for their first marathon, or maybe their first half marathon, or just looking to get into running in general?
I would agree. I don't know if I'm the best person to ask that for, but just sign up for something. Doesn't have to be a full marathon your first time, obviously. Just sign up for something. Sign up for a 5K. I know my sister's done this multiple times, and you can just walk it. Like you don't have to post a huge like a quick time or anything, just to get in the habit of actually training for it. Even if you walk the whole thing, run slow, or what you feel like is slow. I will say, like, each race that I've done, like, I've posted a much, except for the Chicago Marathon, that was really it was challenged, but I posted a much faster score than I would expect, because you get there and like the race vibes and you're like all excited and then the adrenaline's pumping. So just sign up for something. I'm sure you'll like it a lot more than just your training schedule. So
Yeah.
you do your first one, maybe you'll be hooked.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And you're proof that, like we said, there's no one way to do it. You just get
Yeah,
it on the
yeah,
calendar and you'll figure it out along the way.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and don't cancel. Just
Yeah,
figure it
yeah.
out,
Yeah,
even if you have
ABC
to
goals.
walk the whole race.
Exactly. Yep. You'll find your way through.
Yeah.
Well, cool. And then I like to ask about fuel and shoes, but it sounds like shoes was a little bit more impactful for you. Fuel, you were just kind of relying on the aid station. So, for shoes, like, what did you end up liking that helped you out with some of your joints, your knee pain you were having?
Yeah, I was having, so it was more, I don't know if it wasn't quite knee pain. It was like one of the muscles in between on my left lower leg. Um, but I have Hokas. I don't remember which one they are. I love Hokas. I wear Hokas for work in the hospitals. And then I just went to some running store and they like fitted me, I guess, for the shoes, which is kind of a new concept. But yeah, technology is so great. So they
Yeah.
fitted me to my running pattern and whatever, and it ended up being Hokas, and yeah, it eliminated that pain immediately, which kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah. No, those run stores are great. Like, I always like highly recommend going and getting your feet measured or doing whatever arch measurements that they do. Because yeah, they can get you in like the perfect shoe for your foot and how you run, which is just fantastic.
Yeah,
Helps a lot.
definitely. Yeah.
Well, cool.
I will say about
Yeah.
the fuel though. So I made that mistake during this half marathon. Like I drank the water from the water station and then I had the fuel after that. Huge mistake. Definitely save some water for after you chug that fuel. Because
Yeah.
then like the next like half a mile, my mouth is dry and it's like all sticky and stuff.
Mm.
So
Do you remember what fuel they had? Was it just like the goos, or was it something different than that?
it was yeah, the goo, like the really, and yeah,
Yeah, those can be a
the
tough
goo stuff.
texture without water.
Yeah,
They're
definitely.
sticky and thick, and yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had saved some water for that, but
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, cool. Well, I know you don't quite have a marathon on the calendar yet, so looking forward to seeing what you come up with this year. But since you have a podcast as well, and you've got a lot going on in your kind of professional life, what do you have coming up next that's exciting for you?
Good question. So we're buying, so we invest in real estate, our company. We have another property that we're closing on in the next couple of weeks, so that's pretty exciting. I am going, let's see, I'm going camping with my oldest daughter in August for a week, just us two. Well, I say it's
Awesome.
just us two. It's kind of like it's a church event, but it's just me and her going. It's going to be in Wyoming. I'm actually really looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be like 60,000 people there,
Oh,
so
wow.
I don't know what it's going to be like, but we'll see. I assume it's going to be a lot of fun, so I'm really looking forward to that one. And then we're going to take like a couple of extra days to hit like Mount Rushmore and like some of these other sites.
Cool.
So it's going to be really cool just doing that with my oldest, because as your family gets bigger, you have a little bit less one-on-one time with each kid. So this is going to be really, really nice. Really
Yeah,
excited for this.
that's awesome. And sorry, you said it was in Wyoming?
Yes. Yep.
Very cool. So is it just like out on a campground or something like that, out in the middle of nowhere? You guys get to just kind of check out for a couple
Yeah.
of days?
So our church, they do like a every 5 years they do like it's a youth event basically. It's been in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is only like 40 minutes away from where I live the last 20 years. But this year
Yeah.
they're going out to Gillette, Wyoming, because I guess it got too big for this and they needed more
Wow.
wide open land, and I guess Wyoming has that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's going to be so fun. Well, cool. So really appreciate you walking through your marathon journey. That was great. Breaking down kind of how you got from point A to point B, and it's good to hear that you've got some ideas coming up on what you want to race later in the year. If you want to come out to North Carolina, you can come run the City of Oaks with me. I'm doing that one in November. If you
Sounds
need
good.
something on the calendar, but
Maybe
well,
I
yeah,
will.
just thank you again for coming on and telling your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah.